This podcast contains an English accent that most of our Irish listeners will find offensive. Also, there may be some colourful language that you're going to find less offensive. Now, over to Ryan and Leon. Enjoy the podcast.
How do you go about encouraging people to write poetry?
Poetry isn't inaccessible because poetry is song as well. Poetry is rap. Poetry is quite often really close to comedy. And so the minute that you've got a punchline in there and you're playing with a language that's close to poetry, poetry is like comedy that's not funny most of the time. How would you start writing a poem, just with one poem?
I write it on my phone. It's in bed. It's on the bathroom floor. It's wherever I am. If anyone wants to write their first poem and they're thinking, where do I start? Here's your writing prompt. Write a bad poem. If you succeed in doing that, tick, you've completed it. And if you fail, and I hope you fail, you'll have written something that is a good poem.
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 A poem.
I just great in it that.
It just took. It's like the Nigella Lawson thing, the microwave.
Microwave.
The microwave.
The Nigella Lawson thing.
Just show me a bit, but yeah, great.
That was Len Penny talking to Peter Mackay.
Right.
Or Peter Mackay, sorry. The Scottish poets. Peter Mackay, I didn't know this was a title, right? He is the Scottish Macar, which is the poet laureate for Scotland.
Oh, right.
And he's the first dual language poet to hold the title, because he speaks Gaelic and all of his poetry is in Gaelic. Yeah.
Unreal.
I don't know much about whether is there a difference, Irish Gaelic, Scottish Gaelic?
Yeah,
is it all Gaelic? Yeah.
It's kind of like it comes from the same family. One would have one way, one would have went one way, and would have went the other. Woodings. One would have went the other way. Jeez, that's a fucking tongue twister and a half there it was. But I got there.
Yeah.
They're quite different, but they still come from the same. Could they be similar, like the way Italian and Spanish would be kind of in the same family
same like words, and you can kind of guess.
Different kind of. As I said, there's different. There's like say like Germanic languages, there's Latin languages, then there's Gaelic languages, there's Arabic languages. So would come from the same thing. I don't know where the fuck Welsh has come from though. Welsh is like a different.
That's not even. Yeah. I
that's a made up language. That is made by wizards. Made by wizards.
Yeah, there's no influence there from anywhere that I can see.
A fucking Narnia.
No.
Mr. Tumnus came out of the wardrobe, started teaching Welsh.
And like I'm laughing at you now, and it's funny that like he said there, Peter Mackay, about there's a similarity between like poetry and comedy. I think that there is kind of, but have you ever tried to do poems as part of like have you tried stand up before?
Yeah, started off.
I've done stand up.
Have you?
Well, I've done comedy poetry in a stand up event, so like an open mic comedy night. I've done that twice, and
how was it?
Shy. Because having a funny poem isn't the same as making people laugh when they expect you to make them laugh. Going to a poetry night where you're the only funny one, a little bit like Adele Leahy at the Slamavision that we went to.
Fresh air.
Yeah, amazing. That's what it is. Yeah. It's a breath of fresh air. It's not actually. Sometimes it is really funny, but usually if you're in a room with people that expect to be entertained in a comedic way, poetry doesn't really fit the bill.
I suppose, because you're comparing it to other comedy pieces rather than other poetic pieces. So you've got obviously loads of sad poems, and then you're the little happy poem in the middle, and then a poetry sandwich, we'll say, of sad of the crusts, the outer crusts, and then a warm, cheery centre. Whereas if you go to like a comedy night and everyone's laughing, they're just comparing you to the next.
It's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing. I did do comedy first though. I started comedy when I was 19. My first venture into it, and I did it for a couple of months, and I did well.
You did well?
I won a competition. I won the Lucky Duck competition held in the Halfpenny Bridge.
Did you actually?
Halfpenny Inn. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I won the Lucky Duck, and
that's a big deal. The Halfpenny Inn would be a big deal in the comedy scene
it's
in
one of the longest
Ireland.
running clubs. Yeah, the upstairs, and it's the kind of I think it's still going. Like, you know,
it is. Yeah,
forefront of like kind of people dipping their toe into. I think it was Popular Cherry is another one that they have in Whelan's. Popular Cherry Comedy Night, but. I would have done that when I was 19 and did a competition. The winner got to go to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Didn't win that one, obviously. But that was just basically, it was a weird vibe. It was like a poetry competition, but with comedians. So obviously you're going up to get people to laugh, and in the room are everybody who doesn't want anyone to laugh at your jokes. So like you're saying stuff that you get, you know, is funny, that people be crying laughing at it, and they're purposely not laughing because they don't want to look good.
Stuff we were saying last week, maybe is if it'd be like if the audience members were all performing. Yeah,
pretty much. And I kind of stopped doing it, and then I came back to it when I was about 22, I'd say. I did it again for another brief stint, got another competition, did the Lucky Dunk again, and got it again, and then just stopped doing it. Stopped doing it. Yeah, the scene isn't the same as poetry. I didn't like it. It was the scene that made me stop doing it.
All right.
Because it's very competitive, hyper competitive, and you have people there that won't speak to you. Now, I'm not saying everyone, there's some lovely people in the comedy scene, but you would walk into a comedy club, and if people don't know you, they won't speak to you, and they kind of look at you weird if you try to come over and be like, oh hi, how are you, my name is such and such. They're like, who the fuck are you? You get up on the stage, and then you know, if you're kill it that night and you're very good, then they want to talk to you.
How are you getting on?
But not only that, you'll have some people that are then trying to be funnier than you in the conversation after your set.
So it doesn't stop.
And I'm like, the show's over, man. Like, nobody else.
There's no need to.
You don't need to be funnier than me now. Like, we're just having the crack, and they're still on it.
I hear you.
So it's just like, this is a weird vibe. So it just wasn't really for me.
Yeah, fair enough.
You know.
Have you done storytelling? Have you been to like a Clonakilty?
I did Clonakilty before, I did Clonakilty, but I did like I did a poem. I did my Leaving Cert poem, but I basically did like a story into that. So I talked about my own experience with the Leaving Cert, kind of like a long intro to a poem.
Yeah, okay.
Which is a storytelling anyway.
I did the same thing. I did my poem about Top Man Saved My Life at Clonakilty at Fumbley, but with the story. And that landed really well. So I don't know what's the. Maybe we're just not very funny. I mean, you're funnier than me because you've won a competition, but like maybe there's just a gap in that the talent of understanding what funny things are and how to time. I can tell a story, but like I can spin a yarn, but like I can't really do a set where it's Giggles McGee.
Well, didn't I ever tell you the time that I had the worst gig I've ever done in my life was a comedy gig, and it was in the International Bar upstairs. Where the circuit sessions is, and my whole thing was just hold the microphone, very static, talk about Dublin. So like I had a thing where it's like, you know, you'd never really trust someone when you find out they don't drink tea. Yeah. So like, what the fuck do they drink? Coffee. And then I go through like a whole rant of like, coffee at fucking 8 o'clock at night. What are you, a serial killer? Like, are you gonna kill people? And like all this mad stuff. And it was all about kind of Irish Dublin. So did this thing in the International, and again went in, a lot of music comedians didn't speak to you, they're sitting on the stairs not speaking to you, talking to each other, and I was like, this is a bit of odd. But then when I went into the room, obviously as we both know, the International Bar, you don't have a microphone. That threw me, because I was like, what the fuck do I do with my hands? And I wasn't as expressive as I am now, let's say, so I was kind of like, I don't really know what to do, how to project my voice properly. And then because it was the International Bar, it was international audience, so they hadn't a fucking clue what I was talking about. And I was just like throwing stuff out and just seeing if anything and getting nothing. And then at the very end I threw out a throwaway comment about Netflix and chill, and I got a giggle, and then I started and got a bit of a laugh after that, but I was like, this is fucking terrible. And then I remember coming back years later to do the circle sessions doing poetry, and the first time I got up on the stage I forgot like the first line of the poem for like a split second, and I was like, and part of me was like, oh no, it's happening again. And then I
cursed by that stage.
Then I remember the line, and I was like, okay, now I can relax. Now obviously we've both performed at I couldn't tell you how many times we both performed at the circle sessions, but I just remember specifically that time. I was like, it's like the body recognises you're in this space, you fucking loser.
Fuck's sake. But it is brutal when I remember I did a comedy gig at the upstairs of the old. You've done poetry there before. It keeps changing names, but you've done like a poetry art night there before. It's like on Baggett Street, on the corner of Baggett Street and the Wellington pub. The Wellington pub. It used to be called. It was called the Wellington.
Sorry,
Bar Ella. Bar Ella. Yeah.
I knew it as Bar Ella, yeah. It was formerly the Wellington, then
Wellington,
Bar Ella.
Bar Ella.
Now it's been bought over by, I think, some Chinese investors, and it's now been turned into whatever.
I don't know what the fuck it is now. But it's brutal. Like, it's a real horrific experience. Like, just to watch a comedy gig go bad is bad.
Yeah.
But when it's you,
You're dying on your
it's
arse.
absolutely awful.
But do you ever, like... And I remember going, because when I was 19, I used to go to a lot of the open mics, the comedy open mics, and there was people there that would always go and continually just die on their arse.
Yeah, I don't know how that
and
works either.
Would use the same jokes. And surely, like, if you go and die on your arse, you're like, right, I obviously have to do some new, create some new material. But these people just keep using the same stuff. I'm like, are you enjoying just not being funny? Like, some people get like a little pleasure out of like just
kick out of it.
crickets.
Yeah.
You know,
It's the audience's fault. Wait, is that one good audience?
Yeah, my genius, they can't understand it.
Yeah. Well, we're not doing poetry. We're not doing comedy next weekend. But what we are doing is we are going to do a live podcast at Swords Castle as part of the Wavin Words poetry night they have, which includes like a young person's poetry slam.
Yeah.
So that's going to be amazing. I can't wait for that. We're going to talk about that later on. We're going to have the organiser, Sheila Ryder, join us for a little chat as well about that event. We got a nice email, though, from someone that was new to the podcast, a guy by the name of Dara. Dara has his own podcast, actually, called The Clear Out. And he got in touch after our masculinity podcast that we did.
Yeah.
So he listened to that, and he sent us a really lovely message about, really grateful that we're exploring masculinity, and he's really passionate about reevaluating my relationships and masculinity in general. He sent us a poem about masculinity, but I thought, because we'd gone on about it a bit on that podcast, I thought I can't actually share this story, but I went digging and I found another poem from Dara. And by the way, his podcast, I listened to it today. It's basically just him. He's from Wicklow, and he's just telling his honest stories about his life with kind of therapy-esque nuggets of things that you can take away.
Oh, really?
So it's like accessible therapy.
Oh.
Really. It's called The Clear Out. It's fucking great. I think he's been doing it for, it's 200 episodes now, Dara has. So yeah, get on to that. It's really good. I really like that today. But the poem that I wanted us to share is a poem called Time. And I sent it you.
I have it here.
So,
this is Time by Dara Clear. Time is a container. It holds so much. Every breath, every hurt, every touch. It works on us like a sculptor working stone, etching, scraping, chipping, marking. The chisel and hammer firmly in hand until the job is done, until every wince, smile and tear has been rendered, until every sleeping and waking moment can infuse the rock with life. And there are containers within the container, discrete moments and eras, parcels inside parcels. Love lost and found and lost again. The hardening of hearts. The immersion in rivers of pain. Swimming in sunlight. Loving in the dark. Seeing peace slip through fingers like sand. And where are you and I in all of this? What will be left when the hammer falls from the hand?
that was the poem Time by Dara Clear.
Right.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because like when he was talking about the sculpture and you chiseling out your better self, there's a phrase, isn't there? Like man cannot remake himself without suffering, for he is both the marble and the sculptor.
Oh,
Have you heard that before?
I like
that keeps in my mind a lot, which is like, you know, you have to constantly be willing to break and bend and sacrifice and cut your own limbs off to be a better person.
Yeah.
But that is an attitude that I think not has an expiry date, but you do get to a point where what's it all for-ish? You know what I mean? Like, it's a great mentality to have, and it's great positive energy, and it's like forward momentum. It's like, yeah, I want to be a better bloke. It's like David Goggins vibes of like, yes, let's keep going. But if you're constantly like that, you forget the things that I think is nudging to, which you might lose. The peace, the calmness of life, the connections that you may have pushed to the side because you're so obsessed with self-improvement or the way that you are showing up in the world. So it's like, life is fucking mad because you have to have both to have a happy day in a way. But I just think that those two energies, they're rarely in the same room. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're not really usually at the same party.
Balance.
Yeah.
There's a great, I get little messages, inspirational quote from Inside Timer, little inspirational flickers every through my day, and it was, do not judge a day by productivity, but instead by presence, by Alan Watts. And it's more like being present in your day is more important than what you've done that day. And I am a fucker for, I need to do this, and this, and do this. And if I don't do this, then this, then this. But you spend so much time thinking about what you're doing next that you just don't, you miss out on what you're actually doing now.
You forget the things that you like doing.
Yeah.
We were saying that before the pod. We were saying that, like, there's a risk to see the arms of your life pulling at you, like, in all of the things that you like doing and responsible for, I guess, but they're not all the same. You know, like, socialising with friends isn't a pressure. Travelling isn't a pressure. Going to see, making time to go and see your parents isn't a pressure. But if you don't watch it, you end up feeling very suffocated by all of these things that you feel you're on the hook for.
Yeah, and it's very easy to, people are always like, oh, I need to be more productive, I need to do this and do that, but there's another end of the spectrum where people overload themselves, and then you can only do so much. So we're all humans at the end of the day.
It's like that the W.H. Auden poet wrote that poem called Leisure. We shared it about a year ago, and it ends with, what life is this if full of care, we have no time to stand and stare.
Look at that.
Well, I'll show you. Listen, I like poems. Yeah, when I was in Clonakilty, I was there last few days. Me and Mrs. got chatting to a couple from America, and they ran a farm, and we got into this really deep conversation about like how people in like modern jobs, the digital world, all obsessed with tech, they don't appreciate that there's been life before a phone, like decades and millennials of humans who've all pretty much done exactly the same thing to sustain themselves. So like, our generation of people aren't the ones that are the smartest or the ones that are on the front foot. And I was like, I talked to them about a TV show in Ireland that's really popular called Raised by the Village. Yeah. Have you ever seen this TV show? No. Great show on RTE where kids usually it's in the suburbs of the inner city of some city in Ireland, are pissing their parents off because they're not engaging with them in any way. They're on their phone, they're being narky, they're snapping back to their parents. So what the show does is they take those kids and they put them in a farm for like a week, and you should see the transformation, man. Like kids who are like, got the Canada Goose jacket on the bike, doing wheelies, telling the mum and dad to fuck off and they don't want to do any chores today, and then spending a week in Tipperary on a bloody farm and going, sorry, I don't know what I did, I don't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
But then the reason I'm bringing that up is I actually did that poem for the male of this couple.
Oh, really?
I read out that W.H. Auden poem on the fly because I'm class. Because I'm class. Bastard. And he was like, oh my God. I was like, yeah, man, check him out, W.H. Auden, see you later.
Also flexes, when I arrived here, Ryan got a book delivered and handed into his hand.
As you arrived,
I think he rang up the Amazon driver and was like, he's around the corner.
6, yeah.
He's around the corner, just fucking hand me that book, make sure it looks real heavy.
Yeah, a bit of a flex.
I'm a real well-read man, Yeah.
There's an interesting story that I wanted to share with you here. So like, I don't think, we were always well read.
School wasn't something I would have always read in my own time though. I think it was because my uncle worked in Eason's in like the...
Oh, did he?
Not in a shop, but in like the supplier. Like there's one up in... It's the the Darndale Hilton or the Hilton Dublin Airport. At the back of that, there's like an industrial estate, and that's like the Eason's kind of warehouse where they ship out all the. He was working in there, so we used to always get loads of books because he was like, keep them busy. There's a lot of books. Fucking read that.
Oh, sound, yeah.
So like, I used to get a load of books off him, and then I had cousins my own age that we used to just. I'd get me older cousins stuff, and he'd give me fucking Goosebumps books and all. You would be able to sleep at night because you're reading Haunted Dolls and all.
Say Cheese and Die.
Yeah,
that was one of the books.
Or the books where it's like you make a decision. It's like the Bandersnatch, but it was in a book form, and you had to like go to page 18 or go to page 20.
Them books. Are they still around? Them
and you'd
books?
always keep your finger on it in case it hit the end. You'd go,
no, I didn't actually do that.
I didn't actually choose. I was just saying, and I didn't finish. Remember them books? But
I love them books.
I used to always read I used to always read. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was because I was an only child until I was 14 as well. So would have had a lot of time to just fucking either watch telly or read.
We're going to talk a little bit today about like inspiring kids.
Yeah.
You know, young people that are being really inspirational in the world of literature and writing and poetry. So last week I was on Instagram and I saw a post from one of my favourite people. I don't know her personally, but I act like I do. Her name is Katriona O'Sullivan. She's a writer that wrote a book called Poor. It was a memoir that was released last year about her life in poverty between Birmingham, where I don't think she was born in Birmingham. She lived most of her young life in Birmingham and then moved to Ireland and lived in Summerhill for the majority of a young life, and had a baby when she was like 16 and had a really tough upbringing with parents that were addicts that weren't good to her. Like the story is an amazing story, and her story is amazing too. She shared a post that was a poem, and the poem was called Labelled. And the story goes, there was a kid called Reece who wanted to express in his poetry class how frustrating it was when people found out where he's from. So Nadine, his teacher, who was running like a poetry class about like, tell us where you're from, what your story is, got Reece to write this poem called Labelled. Wow. And then that was picked up by Katriona O'Sullivan. She shared on Instagram, and now thousands of people are now reading that poem from Reece. That's all amazing. From a poetry class. I wanted to share the story of that and get Nadine and Reece to tell us not just what the story of the poem is, but what it's like to teach poetry. Because I know you've got experience in that as well, of what it's like as a teacher, helping young people
that's daily.
Find the words to tell their own stories. So enjoy this one. This is the voice of Nadine Curtis, and then we've got Reece, the poet himself.
Hi, Poetry's Dead podcast listeners. My name is Nadine Butler, and I am a secondary school teacher in Dublin who works in Trinity Comprehensive School in Ballymun. I am sending this recording to discuss an amazing piece of poetry that was created by one of my students, Reece Dempsey, who's going to recite his poem in a couple of minutes, and just to talk about the process of teaching poetry at second level. So I've been a teacher of English for 17 years. It's still my passion. I absolutely love it. And if I was to choose a part of the curriculum that I was to say I love the most, it is most definitely poetry. I love poetry myself. I love teaching poetry. And I find that probably it's the most engaging section of the course for students, where I'd get the most kind of personal response and discussion provoked from the pieces that we use in class. So with my current group that my lovely student poet is in, the poets we've covered this year are Paula Meehan and Elizabeth Bishop, who are obviously two very different, probably polar opposite poets. But I would say that the poetry of Paula Meehan was in particular very well received by the students. We talked at length about the stories behind the poetry, the language used. We had discussions, debates. We had heated conversations about, in particular, Heart Lesson, one of Meehan's poems, about the story and the parents and their roles. And I think our students love poetry that tells a real story and a relatable story. And I think that's something, I suppose, over my time as a poetry teacher that I would think, in particular at second level, the students like those more kind of like visceral, experiential poems that tell us something or give us a glimpse into somebody's life. I suppose teaching poetry is different, very different at junior cert and leaving cert and transition year. Transition year is probably the space where we can get a little bit more creative. And I have designed a module in my school that's called Music as Poetry. And I think the students, when they get to that stage, have a very different experience of poetry because we use rap and music and songs, and they're allowed to suggest their own songs that we analyse and address and actually discuss whether they work as a poem or not, or are they a song, or is poetry and song the same thing? So we analyse, ballad forms, and we look at ballad songs, traditional Irish ballads, and then obviously we move forward into more modern music. Like this year we were using Stormzy. We always use Tupac and Eminem. They've been probably the last 10 years we've been using them, and it never seems to date with the students. They love the whole biographical storytelling element. And still then obviously you're linking in with all your poetic techniques and stuff. So it kind of lends itself to working well and reinforcing what you want them to know, but obviously by using high interest material. With regards to writing poetry, I think it's a bit different. I suppose I don't really, enforce that on the students. I encourage it. I think the door opens from them experiencing different poetry themselves, music, even film studies and stuff like that. It just naturally lends itself to opening up that creative space. And what's happening at the moment with me is my students are actually just writing their own poetry freely. They're submitting it to me just for a read or, for feedback. And I tend not to correct it because I think it's their work, and I might give them advice, or I might talk to them about, messing around with their language or focusing in more on rhyme if that's where they're going. But generally I try to just support the process and not give too much input, because I suppose it's their piece, it's original, and who was to say that any poem is wrong or right or can be improved upon? Because I think if you start doing that, you might lose some of the meaning and some of the important messages that the child is trying to relay. So I think it's the one area where I'm not strict on corrections, because actually it's not my space to do that. I think that's what poetic license is. And yeah, for me, it's just more encouraging, developing. And in our school, we actually developed a poetry trail around. It's a walking tour around the local area where our students' work is displayed with QR codes, with audio of them reading their poetry as well. So it's kind of poetry in the community as well, which is another aspect, I suppose, that we've developed. So I'm going to introduce you to Reece, my amazing, talented student, and he is going to recite his poem labelled.
Hello, as Ms. Butler previously mentioned, I'm Reece. I know I sound a bit awkward, but to be honest with you, I'm never really on podcasts or anything, so it's a bit strange. I never really thought I'd be on one, because if I'm being real, who thinks they're going to be on a podcast randomly on a week? So I'm just going to read my poem, hopefully in an acceptable way. That's all right. See if it sounds fine, and then I'll just leave it up to you. Labelled. From young, I learned that people aren't fond of where I'm from, and that there's doubts on who I can become. I feel trapped in the web of lies that's been spun, always showing pity because of where I'm from. So I push forward with unwavering determination to prove that I am worth more than what I am labelled. Now I don't think it really needs much of an explanation. I feel as if my piece is quite straightforward, but it's basically just, the usual stereotypes people put on areas like Ballymore or Finglas or anything like that. They're never really good, but it doesn't really. And what annoys me is it's not what people say about my area, it's what people push onto me because of my area. And it just annoys me. I'm sure anyone who's listening that's from an area like where I'm from, you'll feel it. And that was kind of the inspiration of the poem. Because growing up, a lot of people, even teachers sometimes, not my teacher, obviously, but even some teachers, when I was in primary school, some teachers would think I didn't know a word or whatever, or just assume that because of the place I'm from. And that always bugged me. That's why I like English, to prove I'm from here, I know this word, I know what it means. It's just it's nice. Like poetry, it's just a form of expression, really. It's not, there's no rules. It's not strict. You can just write whatever you want, write what you feel. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sort of a new poet. I never really had written poetry before, but it felt nice writing that piece and then obviously getting recognised. Like, I didn't expect it to get recognised even by Katriona O'Sullivan. Like, that was a big surprise. And she gave me a message saying like, great work on it. And I was like, whoa, like that's mad. But basically the whole point of the message was, I don't want people from where I'm from or anywhere near it to feel that way. And even the title of it, labelled, it's self-explanatory. Like, I've been labelled these things that no, because people push negative stereotypes onto where you're from all the time, or even like who you hang around sometimes. So I just want to get away from that narrative and just kind of push the fact that you can be who you want to be, no matter what anyone else says, thinks about you, or anything like that. That was the main inspiration behind the poem. And yeah, those are just my thoughts. So thanks for listening to this 3-minute voice note. I'm sure this will make for a riveting section in your podcast, and thanks for having us.
That was labelled by the young poet Reece, and a foreword by his teacher Nadine Butler. It's fucking unreal.
And thanks to both of you, and also Lorraine, Reece's mum, for the permission that she gave us to share his poem and the story.
Yeah, such a talented young writer. I've taught in that school. As you said.
Have, yeah.
Trinity Comp. Fun story, actually. In the car park, there's a statue of a young one on a horse.
Right.
And the young one on that horse is what's it called? The young one on that horse. It's my mate's sister.
Huh.
Yeah, she's in school on a horse.
Oh, so it's not like
it's not a fake
historical
thing. It's a real thing. Like, is my mate's sister? It's modelled off. That's what I meant to say. My mate's sister. Yeah. It's modelled off her. So
what's it celebrating?
I think it's just
girls
she came
on
in.
horses.
No, I think she just came into school one day on a horse, and they made a statue about it.
That's not true.
Is that the most fucking Ballymun thing I've ever heard in my life? People have horses. She was on a horse in school. Like, fuck, made it.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it's modelled off her. Yeah, she's the girl on the horse.
Oh,
but it's
man.
a terrific school. They have a brilliant library in there. Like, it's gorgeous. Nessie used to be the librarian. Teresa's the librarian there now, and it's great. Obviously, it's in Ballymun. They have great resources over there, like, and the Reco Centre as well. Like that, I was teaching there as well before. Like, and people have a stigma about certain areas, but there's some great resources being put into the place, and there's some great writers coming out of that place as well.
Wow.
So it's a fantastic poem.
Yeah, and I think it spoke to both of us, because we probably had, like, that's your story, it's my story a little bit as well, where you're fighting against that reputation, and there's imposter syndrome when you're I still feel it now.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ, I still feel it now when I go in certain rooms. I felt it when we did that bloody book launch at Teachers Club, and there's a fucking chandelier. I was like, what is this, lads? But stories like that are really important.
Like I remember teaching in Finglas, which is not too far from Ballymun, and there was a 14-year-old I was teaching second years, and she came up to me and she was like, why are you here? The teachers, obviously. She goes, no, why are you here?
Like here specifically? Like here, yeah, at this
in the
place.
School. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, this is a stupid school. I said, what do you mean? She's like,
wow.
For stupid people. I said, who calls you stupid? She went, everyone. She's 14 years of age.
Wow.
So she already knows at that age that people are against her because of where she's from at 14. So imagine how, and like, she's not the youngest one, so imagine how young it goes back when people go, you're on this side and they're on the other. Like, how much that's ingrained into your psyche, it's mad.
And even because we surround ourselves with good people most of the time, interesting people that are that are open-minded, but like, I've been in pubs where areas are getting digged out, and like there's division being celebrated in some kind of way.
Yeah.
And you're like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah. I remember being at the Dalkey Book Festival, and I was like, I shouldn't be here.
Yeah,
like,
listen.
do you know, and like there's great talks and stuff like that, but you're sitting in the pubs and you're looking at people and like, oh, like these are all coming from money, like, you know, and like Dalkey's is not a natural place for me to inhabit. Let's just say
No.
Monkstown as well, or something like that. You know, it's not places where I would. You know, you find there's a thing. Did you ever hear of code switching? So like code switching is like a social thing where what the people do is basically you code switch depending on where you are in society. So say for instance, you might have, for me anyway, I notice my accent changes a little bit. Where it's a subconscious thing you do. Where like say, if I'm talking to like international people, my accent naturally gets really slower and more pronounced. But then if you're talking to people from a better area, a lot of people will tend to strip back their accent sometimes without even knowing it. And then if you're in let's say a more urban area, we'll call it, your accent goes a bit harsher. You lean more into it.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah,
and it's code switching, and people
switching.
So people switch all the time to fit into, because we're social people. We want to fit into a category, or in, you know, as much as we can socially, and we code switch. But
wow,
it's just, you know.
I think looking back on, we talk a lot about childhood in this podcast, but whatever. Like I remember when I was younger, I think I've made a joke about it before about like putting on a different accent when I was at uni and stuff. And I think if I was to look back, there weren't probably enough poems written about it being okay from where you're from. And I think back then it definitely felt isolating to be from an underprivileged area, and all of the successes that were thrown at you through TV, magazines, newspapers were all from places that you'd never been to, or you've never met anyone who would be on TV, or like, you know, you didn't. I never felt connected to anyone in mainstream media, and so like I felt isolated. My voice felt isolated, and I was also in a neck of the woods where, a bit like Reece maybe, where you know there's bigger lives. There's more to this than hanging around and staying in your suburb and staying in your local area. So like, it's not that you're connected that much with the people around you either. So you're in limbo where you're like, my only choice is to lie.
Yeah.
My only choice is to fake it and then pretend I'm someone I'm not, and then hopefully I get grabbed, or like, you know, the beacon from the spaceship pulls me up from where I'm from because I've lied well, or I've faked it. And I think I carried that for so long, man. Yeah. Like probably even until I moved to Ireland.
Wow.
Yeah, wild. But I think that story is so common when you're from a place where you just don't feel there's a pathway to, I mean, what you'd call, like, I don't know, like the glossy life of success in whatever you're trying to do. It's interesting one.
It is interesting. And like people, you know, they do it all the time when we're not represented enough in the likes of mainstream media. You feel like you're the other. You're not part of the main conversation that's in culture and television. And, you know, it's like the way even like look at the fashion industry. Everyone looked the same. Now they're kind of looking for people that look a little bit different, or that from less kind of represented groups. You'll now see when you go into Pennies and you look at the models and they've got freckles. You know, and they have like,
it's gone in.
They're looking for individuals now, and like I think it's more acceptable now to be part of, you know, to be unique, or to be, well, everyone wants to be unique now. I think it's like the whole thing's flipped now. Yeah, but people don't want to be. No, they all, because of the rise of social media and influencers, they all want to be a character. They want to be unique and different. I don't want to be like you. I want to be like me, sitting here, you know, with my feather boa and my snakeskin boots. You know?
Yeah, I hear you.
It's interesting how things switch, but you know, when you're from certain areas and you know people will look down on you from your area code, it's, or like even Emma Kieran had a great quote from his play Accents, and he said he spent his whole life being too much from Tala, outside of Tala, but when he's in Tala he was not enough Tala. His accent wasn't strong enough when he was in Tala.
Probably dressed a bit different in the park as well, and
because you don't have that, you're not leaning that hard, that kind of, you know. And then when he's outside, people are like, oh, that's a what's that urban accent from, you know?
So he's stuck in, I get it,
in
man.
between,
like,
you know, it's interesting. So even when you're even when you're in an underprivileged area, the people in the you're not underprivileged enough.
Accepted there.
You're the posh family you are, you know. You have
yeah.
fucking carpets on the floors, and you have, you know, nice dinners and all of that all the time. You know,
Like I was, yeah, man, that's actually mad as well. I remember being called Posh Rye. Posh Rye when I was in my teenage years, but I didn't have carpet in my house. So like I just read. I guess listen, like I didn't read like we read now, but I'd be more interested in things than your mates would who were in the parks and stuff. So like you just become, I don't know, like, you know what I mean? You just become more interesting, don't you? And then you're all of a sudden you're interested and you're posh.
But then you're standing out, and then they're like, hang on a second, he's not him. He's not sticking to the status quo. He thinks he's better than us.
And then all of a sudden I wasn't allowed to roll the Rizzlers anymore.
You lost the privilege of the roll.
Exactly. Never smoked them, I was always rolling them.
Yeah. Oh,
it's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, it's tough navigating being a young person.
But thanks, Reece. Jesus. Yeah. And on that, I think now would be a good time to hear from Sheila. So, like, next weekend, we're both going to be at Swords Castle on Saturday, the 7th of June.
The Crenew Festival. Crenew is the festival. Crenew is the whole festival. And we're going to be at Swords Castle for Wavin Words.
Wavin Words. We're going to be doing a live podcast on that night as well. There'll be a young person's poetry slam. We heard from Sheila last week briefly as we did our International Literature Festival Dublin episode. Have I got that right this time?
Right,
yeah, thanks, pal. I've been thinking about that all day. She jumped on and had a quick chat, but let's get her on again and hear about the event. So this is Sheila Ryder.
Hi, Ryan and Leon and everyone out there listening on the Poetry is Dead podcast. My name's Sheila Ryder, and I'm on here to talk about Fingal's Crinnean Slam Poetry Stage that's happening this year on the 7th of June in Swords Castle, along with, or as part of a bigger youth music festival. So Fingal's going all out this year, and I think this poetry stage is something that's just going to be really brilliant for young people, because I think there's a lot of people out there with a lot to say. There's a lot going on. So and I wanted to read this one poem by a girl from TY, from Fingal Community College, that I met when I was in doing a workshop with them. And so this is called War, and it's by Yasmin Al-Fahara. The sting of a bullet pierces her lung. Plugh, cries the child that yearns for his mother as a bullet enters another. The nation will crumble as its people are hurt. The nation will die if no one is heard. I've heard her call my name. I've heard her call in shame. Their lives and hurt will cut me deep, while the soldiers slowly creep. A father hugs his daughter one last time. She will cry and beg for him to stay. There is nothing she can do, not even pray. A boy will stand alone at home, a knife in his hand and a rope to be hung. Boom, 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 a gun will fire. Click, 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 his hand will spar. The glint of the blade, the spark in his heart, the mother that bangs on the door until it falls apart. He didn't want to fight. She wanted the light. To the daughter whose father never came home, will she be all right? Twice she tried, and twice she failed. Twice she tried, and twice she bailed. Is suicide the one and only prevail? The bombs go off with a loud bang. The last thing the girl did was sang. So, this was just one of many poems that were at the workshop, that people wrote at the workshop that, just were really moving. And this is something that she wrote in maybe like 10, 15 minutes. And there's so much talent out there, and there's so many voices, so many different voices, and so many things that young people want to say. So I'm, so so honoured and proud to be part of this of Fingal's Youth Festival. Yeah, there's a good few people signed up already for the open mic section of the evening. So it's the Youth Festival in total. It's going on from 4 till 9 p.m. And then the slam poetry stage is on from 6 to 8. So we're going to have an open mic where young people are going to perform. We also have an award-winning poet, Leon Dunn, who's performing, who you all know. We also have Sasha Turfus, and she's the Poet Laureate in Wexford. And then the Poetry is Dead podcast. Ryan and Leon are going to get up and record a slot live. There's going to be, actually, I don't know what they're going to do. I'm very excited to find out. But there's going to be, interaction with the audience. There's poetry books by a load of different Irish poets, some slam poets, some actually mostly spoken word poets. And I think Leon and Ryan are going to be bringing some of their Poetry is Dead podcast anthology as well to give out. There's also Molly Donnery. She's a gorgeous traditional singer, but it's real kind of modern take on it. And she plays the harp. So that's going to be really beautiful. And it's going to be hosted by myself. So so some of the important details about it. It's for young people age 14 to 18. It's part of the bigger Fingal Youth Festival for Crinan and Og on the 7th of June in Swords Castle. It's our event is called Wavin Words, and that's in the chapel, and it starts at 6 p.m. and finishes about 8:15. If you want to perform, just DM your name on Instagram to @wavingwords, or you can email me at sheila.rider@fingal.ie. And we'll get back in touch with you and welcome you there on the day. And there's no pressure to be, to learn it off by heart or slam. It's, the stage is yours to whether to slam or perform or rap or read or read it as a short story. Each young person will have about 5 minutes each to stand up and perform. So, but you can get up and just perform one, or you can get up and perform more. It's going to be a brilliant event. So I'm really looking forward to it. And really looking forward to seeing the Poetry is Dead podcast there with me. So thanks a million for having me on, and see you next week to wave some words. Bye.
That was Sheila Ryder. Thanks, Sheila. Yeah, I'm buzzing to be in that chapel.
Yeah.
Have you
amazing.
Ever
been to the chapel?
No, never. No.
It's fucking unreal. It's so good. The acoustics in there are amazing.
Yeah, wow.
It's a little chapel, and it's going to be a special day. It's really, really good. And Molly's amazing at the harp, and a great voice on her.
Sorry, poetry, harps, chapel.
Cultured bastards.
Look at that.
Cultured
Go on then.
bastards.
Why not? Go on then.
And it's great.
How are you spending your Saturday?
Like the poem that we just heard. Like that's
I know, man. Oh my god, the end line of that.
It's fucking incredible. Like she sang, and you're just the future is bright for writing. I have faith. Do you know, people are like, oh, the kids are in the phones these days, they're on TikTok, they're doing TikTok dances, the world's fucked. No. You read their work is 10 times better than my work ever was up until I was about at least 30. Like, you know,
for sure, man.
They have things to say, you know, and it's incredible to see. Like with words from Reece, and we had ourselves there on after, you know.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I just can't wait for that slam now.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Looking forward to it. But speaking of poetry, you know, and you can find poems. You know, when you were reading that, what book were you reading when you were on your month seclusion over in the...
I was reading the biography from the footballer Dennis Bergkamp,
and you found a little Dylan Thomas
poem from Dylan Thomas, yeah,
and you were like,
"What the fuck is happening here?"
So I'm reading this book, and I love audiobooks, when I finish things, I just kind of, I'll just have a little chance on this, and why interesting? Because sometimes, you know, you're like, when I was on Audible and you had 1 credit, I spent a lot of time going, right, if I got 1 credit, I have to, you know, but I have Spotify Premium and they've put audiobooks onto it.
Yeah.
So now I've gotten rid of my Audible because and I just,
Audible's gone.
Oh, it's gone, got in the boo. I've used it for years, but I'm like, I'm using Spotify, I might as well just use 1 app. No point paying for 2 if I'm just going to use. So and now
the library the same, is it?
Same wide, extensive. Yeah.
Wow.
So there might be a few only Audible things, but like the majority of books that I read.
So now it's not only musicians getting ripped off by Spotify.
Well, I hope
it's also authors.
I hope the authors are getting a better deal.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
I'm not paying more.
I'm not.
So, I mean,
I don't know. But anyway, so I'm reading this book called Blitzed. By an author called Norman Ohler, and it's basically his whole narrative is that it's set in Berlin in like the 1930s and 40s, and he basically says that after post First World War, and Germany was in a massive depression, and there was obviously inflation to the rise.
No money, and
things were so expensive, like coffee and stuff. People turned to synthetic stimulants, and he's making the argument that everyone was just out of their fucking nut. Out of their mind.
Oh.
Right? Out of their nut. From like the 1920s up until like till the end of the Second World War, essentially. And talking about different kinds of stimulants they were taking, and how cocaine was legal and morphine, and then they were taking like basically crystal meth throughout the whole Second World War, and that's how the Blitzkrieg started. But there's this
drugs were legal. You just say that
drugs were legal at one point. You could buy meth over the counter.
Oh.
It was Prevatin, I think it was called. And it was literally like a little pill. You could just take 2 or 3 and you wouldn't sleep for 2 days. But you felt fucking great. Until you started getting a little bit paranoid and twitchy and thinking people were out to get you when they weren't real. But you know, other than that, you felt great.
When you join a rally and
you start burning books. Yeah, I know. But like, he's just... But I was listening to the book as I was driving, and all of a sudden he... you know when you kind of phase out a little bit when you're... Well, when I'm listening to audiobooks, you phase out a little bit. But then he quotes this poem by Fritz von Ostini, published in 1919, and this is a kind of extract which is translated to English, but it's basically about Berlin, like the 1920s, and how like coffee was more expensive than synthetic stimulants like amphetamines, cocaine. You could just go into the pharmacy and get like a vial of cocaine. And like they had it in Coca-Cola, they had it in all these different drinks. They had like drinks with crystal meth in it that you could just take. You could go into the shop, into your little shop, and just take a little drink of some crystal meth. It's fucking mental, right?
Oh my life!
But he quotes this poem, and it's basically about. It's a satirical poem. It's not, you know, it's not.
This isn't David Attenborough.
This is not David Attenborough. No, this is a satirical poem, but it's by Fritz von Ostini. It's called Neues Berliner Komma Slide, which is in English is "Or we snort and we inject."
Okay.
Once, not so very long ago, sweet alcohol, that beast, brought warmth and sweetness to our lives, but then the price increased, and so cocaine and morphine Berliners now select. Let lightning flashes rage outside, we snort and we inject. At dinner in the restaurant, the waiter brings the tin of coke for us to feast upon, forget whiskey and gin. Let drowsy morphine take its subcutaneous effect. Upon our nervous system, we snort and we inject. These medications aren't allowed, of course, they're quite forbidden. But even such illicit treats are very seldom hidden. Euphoria awaits us, and though, as we suspect, our foes can't wait to shoot us down, we snort and we inject. And if we snort ourselves to death or into the asylum, our days are going downhill fast, how better to beguile 'em. Europe's a madhouse anyway, no need for genuflecting. The only way to paradise is snorting and injecting.
That was We Snort and We Inject by Fritz von Ostini. Fucking mental, wasn't it?
Wild poem.
That was mad.
That's what probably inspired Hunter S. Thompson to be the way he is.
Yeah, we're talking about gonzo poetry there, aren't we?
Yeah. It's Played mad. I suppose like Berlin, they still love to party in Berlin nowadays. You know,
Fuck. Well, they do. Yeah, Jesus.
Can't buy it over the counter.
It's not just now.
But even,
seemingly,
I remember when I was living in Berlin, and Berliners are a different breed because they would be the last one to leave work on a Friday, then they'd go to like Berghain or a nightclub for 3 days, and then they'd be the first one back in the office at 9:30 or 9 o'clock on a Monday.
Wow.
As if
just wired that way.
I remember like meeting a girl before, and like I was working in a coffee shop. She was the supplier of of different things. I think she was a beer supplier. I worked in a pub that did specialty coffee, and she came in. She's the beer rep, and she comes in like 9 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, "Yeah, all right." She's like, "Yeah, just a bit tired." And I was like, "All right." She's like, "Yeah, 3 days in Berghain." I was like,
"What?
3 days?
3 days?
I'd be in a fucking box in the ground had I done 3 days in Berghain."
Can you stay there?
Yeah.
You can't. You can just stay there. If you're able to get through security, you don't have to leave.
So if the way a Berlin nightclub, and people go, "Oh, I have to go to Berghain." That's not, that's the only one. No, all the nightclubs in Berlin, if you go up and you queue and you get a stamp, they're usually big stamps. You pay about 15 quid in, a tenner in, whatever it is, and you go in for however long you want. They open on Friday morning and they close on like Monday night. And you go there, and what happens is if you go at like night time and you go into the nightclub like the way we would, you go a few pints, then you go to the nightclub, you're probably queuing for about 2 hours to get into these clubs. But there's people on the street pushing shopping trolleys, and they're like selling beer, so you can have a beer on the street while you're queuing. You're literally boozing on the street waiting to go into the club. And then you go into the nightclub, and then when you leave, if you keep your stamp on you and you go back, you can get back in. You skip the whole queue. You only pay a $5. You're back in for however long you want again. But what the Berliners do is, I've heard they've a system. They go before they go to work. So a Berliner will get up in the morning in their little business suit, whatever it is. They'll go into a nightclub, have a little espresso, little bop. There's no queue because it's not fucking busy. They'll go off, do their day of work. They'll then get changed into their going out clothes. Then they'll go straight to the club. They'll stay there till whatever time they want. They'll leave then, have a little sleep, or they might not sleep. And then they'll go back, pay another $5 in, and off they go.
No, like, you know how like in Western people, I think they live in this world where like they have to sacrifice something to have a good time.
Yeah.
So like that's how our attitude is. You work the weekend, and the weekend, yes, come on, we can go.
If your missus isn't fuming at you, then you haven't done a good job.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're not in the doghouse, was it any crack? But like that seems to be something that we made up.
Yeah, it is. Self-flagellation. Is that a thing? No.
Yeah.
Flagellation. Yeah. I thought that was something different for a second.
No.
But
no.
It's different over there because the public transport system over there is 24 hours on the weekend. Now the buses run 24 hours, 24/7. The buses run, but the trams and the trains run 24 hours on the weekend. But like people go out till whatever hour, and they come home whatever hour, but there's no, like say in Britain and Ireland and all, they have like a time where everyone's finished at the same time. Like Harcourt Street at 4 o'clock in the morning is fucking packed.
Yeah.
Supermax at 2 o'clock in the morning on O'Connell Street, packed. And then there could be like people that are boozing and people are having fights and it gets messy and the guards are called. In Berlin, you can go and leave any time. So there's never any one massive group of people. Unless maybe at the start where they're queuing to go in, but they're in good mood then. But people just kind of tap out and leave whenever they want. So there's always a steady flow of people coming in and people going out. So you never have that massive influx of people kind of either entering or leaving at the same time. So there's never really like... A Berliner will have a beer at like 4 o'clock on a Tuesday because they're like, I'm just having a beer. They won't drink 17 pints on a Friday night.
Yeah.
They'll just drink whenever they want because it's not a big thing. Like, fuck.
Wow.
They don't put it on a pedestal. They just fucking go out and have a good time and they come back whenever they want.
Do you want to go?
Yeah. I used to just not go out.
I've been.
I used to not go out because I was like, you wouldn't know, not everyone what time you're coming on. You wouldn't know what day you're coming on because you could be there.
Yeah, well, like when I went there on the subways, like you said, it's 24 hours. You never really, because people are dressed in certain different ways anyway.
Yeah.
But you never really knew whether people were going out or coming home, or like, because just the way that like people would be dressed like in a boob tube with like glitter shorts on it Monday morning,
and they're in
like,
their 60s,
and you're just out. Like, are you out or are you just out? Like, there is no out in Berlin. I guess
they all dress like punks, and like it's just that kind of, they dress. You don't want to look like you're dressing to go out, but you still want to look good. There's a kind of balance, and everyone wears black, and then you'll have people like wearing beanie hats in 35-degree heat in August because they want to look cool, and you're like, you must be fucking sweating. You're wearing a trench coat, a pair of Doc Martens. You must look like a fucking poached sausage underneath it.
Oh my god. I'm going to take you from Berlin to another city, another European city, to Paris.
Jet setters.
Yeah, we're going to go to Paris. I'm going to read a poem from a collection called The Gospel of Gargoyle by a writer called James Harpur. The story of me getting a hold of this, I was in Clonakilty over the last couple of days, and I think everybody should do this. If you're in a new town, go to the bookshop. Go to the independent bookshop and have a chat. And I did that. Went in and met a woman called Jill. Jill is the bookseller at Kerr's bookshop on the main street of Clonakilty. And I just asked her, like, is there anything... And you know how it is, like, the poetry section is the top right-hand side corner of one shelf. Like, no matter where you go in the world, there's always one... It's always the smallest section.
Yeah.
I was like, is there anyone that's local that I could pick up the collection? I was like, yeah, pick this up. And it's called The Gospel of Gargoyle. I don't really read much concept poetry collections where there's a one total story of the book, even if it's poems. Usually it's like just a collection of the person's best work and that. This is a concept story, and the story's amazing. It's about a guy who goes to Paris and wants to find out why the Notre Dame Cathedral was set alight in 2019. Recently enough, remember there was a big fire and that to get reconstructed.
People fucking donate money.
He's trying to find the answer, and he stumbles upon a gargoyle. It's an amazing story, this book, of like mad. It's so good, and it's a little bit like, you ever read The Happy Prince by Oscar Wilde? So like you got the statues like who you'd see is like locked up at this cathedral that can't move, and just locked in this like never-ending world, like not being able to do anything, to see anything. But like the gargoyle doesn't understand like human connections or what poetry even is. So this poem is in the middle of the book, and it's called Poem, and it's a back and forth between the gargoyle and the protagonist. It's called Poem. One Sunday night, I flew off after a day of roaming streets like a stray dog. The sky as close as cosmic asthma. The rows of shut-up shops and kiosks. Wet benches in the Jardin du Luxembourg. And pale-faced painting joggers had recast Paris into the limbo of Sunday ebbing at boarding school. It was a pleasure just to fly, land and be, and gaze at glittering Paris with gargoyle. The lights remind me of the daffodils back home beside our local rectory. I can see the house with its black front door tucked into a hill and shielded by trees, and a field slopes down towards the churchyard, and daffodils pour across the grass in clusters of saffron, undulations or single stars. Gargoyle bit his claw and growled. You make a field flow before me, as if your memories now mine. Tell me, are words or sounds things? The wind is sound as well as thing. A poem is what? A word thing? A sound thing? Or word sounds? Sometimes words wriggle in my throat as if thought is shifting them, for me to spit out like dead spiders. And thought words have rigged out from when you made me remember the great fire and speak that stuff. I've scripted word things on stone with clinker grit and scratch of claw dipped in a rain muck of dirt. He lurched up then, regaining balance, tottered towards a tower wall. I followed right behind, and at a glance saw scratches on the stone, just legible, lines of words like rows of static ants. Gargoyle rules the world. One spark can turn into a sun. Who sees bats at night, black on black? I read aloud while he inspected me like a stone pug dog waiting for a pat. Alors, my words are poems or what? They seem to be what I would call graffiti. Perhaps graffiti is the language of gargoyle. Then what makes poems poems? I don't know what a poem is, except perhaps imagination dashed into words, the way you were describing the fire of Notre Dame. You took shortcuts with words. Why does a poem need words at all? Why can't it stay a thought thing? Returning to the parapet, I felt the gale increasing. Dark clouds were floating in like an armada of surfacing whales. Rain began, at first a splattering, intensifying, slanting heavily. "Look," he shouted, leaning over, pointing. I followed the line of his claw to see, jutting from the wall, a stone creature. "See there, its mouth, a poem, quickly." And it was yawning out a trickle of water. Then a vomit spout shot out and held its form for a second, then scattered, a poem, in glassy beads of syllables breaking into the night.
That was Poem from the collection The Gospel of Gargoyle by James Harpur.
And the whole book is like that. Frustrating back and forth between this man and this gargoyle. It's fucking great. I picked it up, started reading it, because I was like, I don't think this is me, this. But then I was so glad to put everything aside of what I was doing that day and just smash through that.
Kind of reminds me of like The Snowman.
Yeah, well, it's that vibe.
The French snowman made of stone. The Stone Man.
The Stone Man.
And wanting something and then not getting it, yeah. The frustration of just kind of going around. He wants something from him. Yeah, it's an interesting concept as well to have like an entire collection. Like,
rare. I don't pick many of these up.
Yeah, it's very good to have like it's like a film, like a poetic film, I suppose.
Yeah,
do you know. I
really like reading it, man, and thanks to Jill at Curse for recommending the book. And we got into a conversation around like, there's Clonakilty down there, not too far from Clonakilty. So we've met Daniel Galvin before, and he hosts Clonakilty events in Cork, not too far from where that town is, Clonakilty.
He was lovely.
Yeah, great fella.
Beyond the Pale, wasn't
it? Yeah, we met him at Beyond the Pale. And we were talking about how amazing those events are down in Cork. So, yeah. And apparently there's a spoken word scene in Clonakilty as well. There's a monthly event at Dubara, which is a pub there that hosts, like, popular events. So, like, yeah, it's all going on in Cork.
There is I've been down in Cork City, and there's a very good poetry scene there. But I didn't know there was one out in
West.
Good stuff.
We'll wrap up the show. Last night I was at Whelan's, going to see a good friend of mine, but also an incredible singer called Conor McLain. Conor McLain's from Derry, and he's just released his album called Something Starting. Did a great job last night at Whelan's, and there's a track on that album that is just very, very special. The track we're going to play is called Adored by You. It's got really nice vibes. Like, you're going to really enjoy this. Before we listen to Conor, Leon, thanks for your time.
Always a pleasure, Ryan. Bye.
Next week we're going to be another live podcast on the road, Swords Castle.
It's going to be lethal.
Let's go.
Get yourself in the way. Come on.
See you later.
Support our podcast.
Make you feel so blue, but some people can make you feel like new. That's you. Every time I catch you staring at me, it's the only time I find it hard to speak. And all my friends around the world, although they try, can make me feel alright. friends around the world, although they try, can make me feel unheard. But you give me more, you make me feel it on a Monday, a Tuesday, maybe even Wednesday, right through to Sunday. Monday, a Tuesday, maybe even Wednesday, right through to Sunday. Yeah, I feel good and I feel new when I'm adored by you. Days, they roll by when I'm with you. But it's been so long and you moved on to better things. And I know it's only a matter of time till I see you again, and we do things we might regret. My friends around the world, although they try, can make me feel unheard. But you give me more. Yeah, all my friends around the world, although they try, can make me feel unheard. But you give me more, you make me feel it on a Monday, a Tuesday, maybe even Wednesday, right through to Sunday. Monday, a Tuesday, maybe even Wednesday, right through to Sunday. Yeah, I feel good and I feel new when I'm adored by you. To say I adore you, said I am proud. You know I'm proud, proud, proud. 'Cause I am proud to say I adore you.